People of Earth, we have come to upgrade your cosmic consciousness. DNA activation ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. I'm Craig Anderson.
And I'm Lou Quinto.
Today we'll be talking about critical thinking. And as always, we'll break it down into three areas. One, what is critical thinking? Two, why is it such a much needed competency for businesses today? And three, what are the benefits of critical thinking? So, Lou, why don't you tell us, what is critical thinking?
Well, this has literally been the last 30 years of my life, is working with companies, coaching, training, facilitating in the area of critical thinking.
Right.
And when I say critical thinking, we immediately think of problem solving, decision making, strategic planning, creativity, and innovation.
Yeah.
And I like to break it down as far as the definition into three areas. One, it's thinking through a situation with clarity and with precision. Two, it's looking at a situation and looking at data that is both fair and accurate. And then lastly, it's only looking at that information that is relevant to your current situation. And a lot of times when it comes to critical thinking, we see a problem, we jump on it, and we don't think through it clearly, we don't think through it logically, we have biases, so therefore we're not looking at something fair and accurate. So for instance, if I'm in a sales situation, I may only be looking at a problem from a sales perspective and not looking at it from the marketing perspective or from the accounting perspective. And so when you go in and look at a situation like that, you're not looking at it in a fair and accurate type of way. And the other thing too is we're in an information environment, and we immediately start pulling tons of information into a problem. In fact, some people, I like to call them data bathers. They love to just bathe in data. The more information they have, the better that they feel about solving a problem or making a decision. And I always tell people that when it comes to all of that critical thinking actually gets you to look at a problem from 30,000 feet. It's not jumping into the problem right away. There's the old adage, you can't see the forest through the trees.
Right.
But one of the things I always like to say is sometimes you can't see the problem or the decision through the data that you've gathered and you've collected. And so critical thinking is truly looking at those three aspects of assessing a situation, looking at it without bias, and then lastly, looking at that information which is only relevant to your current situation.
Yeah, I think critical thinking plays an important role, at least in my experience in the different companies and businesses I've worked in, is it seems so often that everything's kind of driven by the quarter. So, everybody's so focused on hitting that quarterly number, or they're focused on the month and or the current issue at hand without looking kind of broadly at why are we having this issue? Why does this issue continue to recur? And that's where I think critical thinking comes in. In my old days at a big, large national bank, I used to ask the question staff meetings, we like to talk about, are we making money? We like to talk about, is it legal? Are we meeting the compliance requirements? But I think critical thinking is also, is it the right thing to do, and what are the long-term implications of doing it? This is great for us for this month, this quarter, this year, but what does it mean for the business 4 years from now if we're making these decisions today? And I think critical thinking for me is kind of pulling those bigger picture items together while you're focused on the short-term goals, really thinking about what the long-term implications are for the issue for me.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Very good. So, Lou, why is this such a much-needed competency in businesses today?
We're not just saying it's a much-needed competency. It's demonstrated as it's a much-needed competency. There have been lots of studies lately. In fact, if you just do an internet search for the top competencies that employers are looking for in the 2020 era, you're going to see complex problem solving, critical thinking, and also creativity right at the top three. And when you think of competencies for a job, normally you think about technical skills and things like that.
Yeah.
No. It's literally complex problem solving, critical thinking, and innovation and creativity. And so the reason why, and this is just my honest opinion, is that I think that we've got, I always look at this from two aspects. One, technology. Technology has given us an entire generation that has been born with literally a cell phone or a computer in their hand. And when they need to solve a problem, make a decision, they immediately do an internet search, ask the question that they want, and boom, all that information, those references come out. And when you get to work, as you and I both know, you can't do an internet search for your problems or your decisions. You literally have to take a look at the situation, assess the data, and be able to, as you said, look into the future, playing chess, not playing checkers, where, okay, what's if we do this, what are the implications down the way? And what CEOs are telling us is that in order to be successful, their employees need to have good critical thinking skills, and they're finding they're not.
Well, and I think it's an interesting question because I've seen all that data around. CEOs want to have all those things you just outlined, right? Critical thinking, creativity, and all those things. But I sometimes wonder when you see that as so I'm the CEO of a company with 100,000 employees. Do I want that from 100,000 employees, or am I talking about that as a CEO from like the level beneath me and the level beneath that of my senior and mid-level executives is where I'm looking for that critical thinking? Is that something they're looking for in entry-level jobs? Is that, or is there a little bit of bias just creeping in, coming at this from a critical thinking perspective? Is there some bias that CEOs want that because that's what they see around them? But if they went down 3 levels in the organization and said, hey, is that what I want for my entry-level jobs? I sometimes wonder if they would agree with that. I think it's still a valuable skill, and I think it's as you progress through your career, where you go, you're going to need it more and more as you get higher up in the organization, and you move from kind of your job being about doing to your job being more about the decisions you make as opposed to the actions that you take. And so I just wonder if critical thinking is why we need it early on. You need to be trained in it, but is it going to pull into your career early in your career, or is it something that's going to come later in your career?
Well, I'd like to say early in your career, because habits are hard to break. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And if you wait till that person gets to be in the management type of role and they haven't been trained in that, they've already got their habits on how they make decisions with their gut, whatever it may be. They're a data bather. They like lots of information, so they take their time in making a decision, and that prevents someone from being, both of those prevent people from being good managers.
I agree, but I also don't know that, do you want your teller to be super creative in how they track their dollars going out of their till every day? I mean, I think there's a place for all these things. Right. And there may be in that customer interaction, you want them to have some critical thinking when they're dealing with a problem. But it's not always that I don't need creativity in a job that's hugely compliant and making sure you tick every box every day, right? So I think we need to think about it as, as you grow in your career, this is probably going to be needed more and more. But don't be too dissuaded saying, geez, what a waste I learned all these critical thinking skills because I don't use them early on. Yeah. It's something I think over time will grow.
Well, and not to belabor the point, but I think every position, people solve problems, make decisions. And the more effectively they can do it, the better it's going to be for the bottom line, because you're not wasting time and productivity.
Great.
Okay. The third one is, we've already kind of started talking about this, but the benefits of critical thinking within an organization. So why don't you pick up from what you were talking about as far as benefits?
Well, I think the benefits ultimately come in is it's something I said earlier in the video today is the benefits are, starting to ask what are the long-term implications of this and what are kind of the unintended consequences. There's a whole lot of times in business where you made a decision and you said, all right, this is the decision we're going to make and this is what we're going to do. But then there's unintended consequences. And if you haven't actually sat down, if you're making these decisions in the heat of the moment or you're making them for the short term, sometimes you're not thinking, well, if we do this today, what's that going to do down the road? And I think that's one of the benefits of critical thinking is, okay, now I can see what might be coming. So let me take 5 more minutes in this decision to think about, all right, if I do this, what's it going to look like in 3 years? And I think that's where some of the benefits come in, or even coming in with different ideas or maybe different ways to come at the problem.
Yeah. And I'll go back to what I said in our second bullet point, and that is every employee within the organization solves problems and make decisions. And they may do it by themselves or they're doing it in a group. And the more effective they can be and knowledgeable about good critical thinking skills, the more productivity you're going to get out of people. In fact, I like to consider critical thinking as a great time saver, because you know that I only have to look at a certain set of data. I don't need to look at all of the data that's part of that. And what ends up happening then is you are increasing your revenues and your productivity because people are solving problems, and problems aren't becoming little problems that are growing into then bigger problems.
Right.
And when they become big problems, that's when we're spending a lot of money. And so if you can do these things at every level, but also on the front line, as I like to call it, because those are the people that are truly dealing with the day-to-day issues. They're talking to the customers. They're talking to clients. Clients have issues. They need to solve those problems. They need to give them alternatives. And it's best, instead of just reading a script off of the screen, that if customer XYZ says, I have a problem with, problem A, then
Right.
give them this answer, is to literally have them sit through and think about and make that plan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are some of the benefits that I see of good critical thinking.
Sure, that's fair.
Okay.
So
key takeaways.
all right. So I think for me, a key takeaway today is really, I've never heard the term data bathers in my life. And now I just have this Uncle Scrooge view of him diving through the gold, except now it's diving through piles of data.
Oh, people actually literally just go back to their office and they throw paperwork on the floor and they just roll around in it to feel the data just flowing over their
feel
body.
the data flow
Right,
through me.
exactly.
Yeah. No, but I do think there's kind of an issue where you talk about where there's so much data, there's no information.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the takeaway from all this to me is, putting too much data out there without the interpretation of the data is where you ultimately get in trouble.
Mm-hmm. And not only the interpretation of the data, but the relevance of the data. Is this data truly relevant to the problem or the decision that we're currently making? And that is good critical thinking skills. And so if you can take that 30,000-foot view, as I said, to be able to truly take and look at information, look at it in a clear and logical way, look at it with accuracy and no bias, and then looking only at that information that's relevant. I'm pulling another Quinto here. I'm giving you the 3 points as key takeaways.
There you go, yeah.
But I truly believe you'll find it beneficial to the organization.
Well, no, I actually enjoyed your call out to your honest opinion versus all the dishonest opinions we've been putting out there for 37 episodes up to this point. So,
all right. We appreciate you tuning in to this episode of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership, dealing with critical thinking skills. If you've liked this video, please go ahead and click the like button, subscribe so you know when a future episode is going to come across, and also share this with individuals within your organization or people with whom you work to be able to get them exposed to one of the top competencies that leaders are telling us are needed in every organization, and that's critical thinking skills. So we appreciate you tuning in. I'm Lou Quinto.
And I'm Craig Anderson.